Welcome to Let's Talk Passion and Purpose, the podcast where we explore the journeys of creators, leaders, and visionaries who've turned their passions into purpose. Join your host, Nicole Thomas, as we dive into inspiring stories, uncover strategies for success, and help you take the next step toward a life filled with meaning. Let's get started.
Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Passion and Purpose with me, your host, Nicole Thomas. I'm excited this evening because we have Courtney Minor in the room. Courtney Minor is a multidisciplinary artist specializing in collage, photography, film, assemblage, and product design. She's based in Jersey City, New Jersey, in the USA, and her work is rooted in her emotions, psychology, mental health, memories, travels, and love of science fiction. Her style is primarily contemporary abstract with street art, surrealism elements. Courtney was named 2023 Top 15 Black American Assemblage and Collage Artists by Saatchi Art by Singulart Gallery. And here we are with Courtney Minor. Courtney, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm excited to have our discussion.
Yeah.
So, that's a lot. I love this word, wow. So, wow, wow. Your work spans several disciplines: collage, photography, assemblage, and product design. Tell us, how do these different forms of expression help you tap into your purpose as an artist?
Well, my purpose has been evolving even since I wrote that bio, that statement. I've been dwelling a lot on what my purpose is. And I think it's really, to speak emotion and people's truths into reality. I think that's kind of where I'm kind of zeroing in on. And I say that because, those who have spoken to me or seen my artwork, they know that my work is very emotive. Like, it's just completely emotion driven, completely organic. I started a body of work called The Others that I've been working on now for a few years, adding to the series as I go, expanding. And it's really about anyone who feels othered in society. And I picked that because it really ties back with the things that matter to me, that I care about.
Mm-hmm.
I care about equality. I care about social justice. I care about people respecting humanity and respecting others, no matter their national, ethnic, gender, sexual, anything identity. And I think it took me a few years to really crystallize that aspect and why my paintings come off emotive. Sometimes I'm talking about families in my work. Sometimes I'm talking about the locations I travel. Sometimes it's friends and family. Sometimes it's people I don't know at all. And I realized in the early years of my work that I was focusing in on family and friends because that's what brought me joy.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a transition point during 2020 where I started adding more words to my work. And with those adding of those words, I started really focusing in on the things that both bothered me about the world as well as excited me about the world. And to see my evolution now, where now I'm definitely deep in collage, but now I've evolved into beyond just product design. I'm working on installations. I'm working on a little bit of lighting design, partnering with people to do movement and animation with my work. I'm also building a sculpture / puppet. And all of this ties back to how can I best convey the emotions that the people who are featured, though I say people with quotation marks, because they're basically people that I've created. They're new humans. They're not literal in any way, sense, or form. They're more representational of all of this mental health, psychology, things I care about, done in a way that it might not be for everyone, but I think the people it'll resonate with, it'll really resonate. And really pulling those new humans and those new landscapes, because I'm working on landscapes as well, into this narrative of how you can exist in a space and be your authentic self, no matter who you are. And I think that's core to who I am, but I think it took me a long time to learn to articulate that in this now 5.5, 6 year journey of me being a professional artist, as well as in my mind, an artist, because I just started a few years ago. Before I went simple, like, oh, I like sci-fi. I care about mental health. Now I've really crystallized, like, no, this is what I really stand for and what I care about. And this is the subject matter I'm going to talk about, whether it makes you comfortable or uncomfortable. And that's pushed my practice to be more abstract, to sometimes not even feature what I would call my new humans at all, which a lot of people haven't seen that work. Like I said, I've been working on it for about a year, and it's probably going to take me another year to create that body. But I'm looking forward to people seeing my new expression of what I stand for and who I am.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like you have so much clarity, and because you've evolved, you're able to take all of those complex emotions and your core values and tying it to humanity and create this body of work that I have to tell you is mesmerizing. Right?
Oh,
I've seen your work and how you've incorporated words and how you really are able to capture emotions. Um, so I just say kudos to you. You mentioned that you kind of stepped into this world and you've started evolving. Let's take
mhm.
a step back. How did you get started on this journey?
You want to go all the way back?
What? Now, let's start from a certain point because, I've known you for a while now, and I
Yeah.
know that this was not the art world, I think, has always been a part of you. Like we're all creative, but you really started to own your space. And
Yeah.
so tell
Yeah.
us more about how you got started and then walking into purpose and authenticity.
Yeah. So, like many artists, I have a day job. Some are arts educators. I'm in marketing. And before that, as I was trying to kind of discover what I wanted to be when I grow up, I was I started my career in my day job in a more technical part of the world. It was like kind of like data. And I kind of came to a head with one of the leaders at my company where it was a semi argument, but I was also just at the point where I just felt underappreciated and I felt like I was at my wit's end, as well as I just got tired of being on the chopping block simply because I just kind of moved differently in a corporate environment. Um, I didn't feel as appreciated as I'm like, I know I'm more than capable. Let fast forward in parallel with that. I basically said something I shouldn't have said. And I was like, oh, I'm going to lose my job. Let me just go away and figure out my life. And I remember I went to Vietnam and I went there and I said, Courtney, aside from this vacation, you need to figure out a way where you don't have one source of income or one source of anything in your life anymore. Because I hated that feeling that I was beholden to these people and they could simply just get rid of me simply because they don't like my personality, not because I couldn't do the job. And as I was trying to work through how to take care of myself and create another avenue of not only passion, but as well as providing for myself, I got really overwhelmed when I was sitting in my loft bed in Vietnam. I was in this tiny apartment in Ho Chi Minh City. And I just got overwhelmed when I started making collages out of the photography I took while I was there. And I went into photography using just purely my iPhone, probably about 2 or 3 years before that. A friend of mine at the time was very into photography and got me into street photography. And I started dabbling in that. But something clicked to make me just start printing out my photographs and collaging them. At the time, I restricted myself as I left Vietnam and came back to New York in 2019. in my mind, because again, I had a complex about my artistic skill. I was like, well, I'm not photorealistic. I can't make these people look perfect like some of the fine art painters I've seen. So what I'm going to do is pick my favorite photograph, blow that up, and then collage within the lines of the photographed image. And that's what I began doing. Then I painted around the photograph image. The actual canvas itself was printed canvas, printed photograph, but it was my own photography. And now I realize that was training wheels because I was too afraid to just let loose and just draw a figure that didn't look perfect. But now I know. Then I thought, oh, this is what I need to do, and this is how I do it, and all that good stuff. But anyway, so I did all that as a stress reliever because I was freaking out thinking I was going to lose my job. And then things ended up working out in my job. The guard changed. But by that time I had made like probably 5 or 6 paintings between when I had that epiphany, like in the winter where I was in Vietnam. And by the time a friend of mine came to my apartment to visit me, which would have been like February of 2019. And they were like, yo, this is some great artwork. Who did you collect? Because I am an art collector. Like I love buying art, sculpture, film, prints, all kind of stuff, paintings. And I was like, no, I didn't buy this. Like I actually made all this. And they were like, no. And I'm like, yeah, I made it. And that fast forwarded into a friend of mine, Julianne Hibbert, who she's an artist and designer based in Manhattan, also a marketer like me. She was greatly pushed me to start showing my work. My friend Indaya, who I worked with in my day job, she was one of the main people who convinced me to get a domain name and website. And all these people, my friend Kyle, another friend of mine, the one that was a photographer, she was encouraging to an extent at the beginning of my career in 2019. So all these different voices were all saying, push it, go further, don't stop, don't hold back, which I appreciate all of them, even the one that, I'm not as close with anymore, that friend. And I finally got the domain name probably in the summer. I opened my Instagram the day that I think Instagram crashed, and I was like, this is a sign. I shouldn't be showing my stuff. No one's going to see it. I was all in my own head. And then, of course, everything settled down. Instagram came back up. The website everything came back up. And I started showing my work. I showed at a gift shop, a really amazing gift shop, which I have to plug. Their name is Nailu. They're based in Harlem. They go by Nailu Gift Shop. They gave me my first big break, not only in art, but also in marketing and insights consulting. Like, I love them to death. Mark and Katrina, if you listen to this, I love you both very much. You have no idea how much I respect you. So they gave me basically my first solo. It was in their gift shop, but it wasn't like a gallery, but like they gave me my first opportunity. Another person that gave me an opportunity is Sandra Heath at the Heath Gallery in Harlem. I went to their hang night. I think her daughter is the one that sponsors it. That was my 2 big like opportunities. And then a friend of a friend introduced me to the head curator of the art collection for Marcus Samuelson's restaurants in Harlem. He owns Red Rooster and all different restaurants all over the world. And I remember I talked to that friend like on a Saturday, Sunday. By Sunday night, my painting was going to be hung in their restaurant. Wow. And I was just like, my painting with all these amazing artists. Like, I mean, they have some of the best Black artists as well as brown artists, like probably in the US, maybe the world, hanging up in their restaurant. So for little old me who was like, I'm just gluing stuff to this canvas, I was like, I was shocked, right? And again, this is me, like, I don't know anything about the art world. So that was like the initial phases. That was probably like fall of like 2019. And then a friend of mine, Jason Johnson, he's a big art lover. He was like, hey, you need to start, now that you've done this, he said, you need to progress to the point to build a body of work, and start showing in galleries. He was explaining the art world to me, where there's the ones, of course, that, take the 50%. That's like, a little bit more reputable. They have the pay to play ones. He was like, avoid pay to play. And I was listening to everything he said. And so I really focused on trying to get gallery placement. But again, I was up against a lot of people. So I went the other route. I started showing at fairs, and I applied to this one that was sponsored by Saatchi Art. It's called the Other Art Fair. I didn't know in the grand scheme how big of a deal this was. I didn't know it was like the number one independent art fair for artists and I didn't know people got rejected. Like, full transparency, like no gloat. I just really didn't know because I didn't know anything about the art world. But I was very delighted when I got accepted because I applied for like their like spring show. So I applied for that one. All of this in 2019. And then I showed, and then I did well. I got director's pick. Most of my booths sold out. I sold all my prints. I sold about half of my original works. Like, things were good. And
Oh,
yeah, that's kind of
now
how
I tell you, that
Yeah.
is amazing, right? What a story coming out of, and not even coming out, coming out of corporate America, because you're still in that world, but
Uh-huh.
being able to be vulnerable enough, take that step back, and that reflection and being in Vietnam opened a new pathway for you.
Yeah.
So you've opened up a lot and shared so much. I'm going to take a couple of steps back
Okay.
because you said there were voices, right? There were voices telling you to keep moving, keep going, and helping you navigate this new world. But yet, I want to know what your mindset was as you were going through this process, because you're very new,
Mm-hmm.
very young to the process, and
Mm-hmm.
also very vulnerable. What were you telling yourself to help keep going in the midst of the movement, the traction that was happening
You
with it?
know, my personality, for those who are listening who don't know, I I'm very ambitious. I'm very much a go-getter. So I guess to answer your question, I wasn't thinking that much. Like, I rarely get in my head in that way. Like, if I get in
Mhm,
my head about something, it's about some plan or tactic that I can't see to fruition. But I
mhm.
never get in my head about capability or the right to be there. I always, this might sound arrogant, but I always feel like I have a right to be everywhere. Like, who's going to tell me I can't be somewhere? Like, I just don't.
Say that again, Courtney. Say that again.
I just feel like I have a right to be everywhere. I guess that's why, like, there's other artists who say, well, how did you know you felt comfortable enough to apply? I'm like, why not? Like, I just don't think that way. And I think that translates whether to my art or my corporate. I'm not hierarchical. I do not care about titles. I could care less if I'm talking to anyone who they are. I'm just going to talk to you. And I think that translates to how I went through this process, applying to fairs. Like, there was no, oh, well, this is a big deal. Am I good enough? Should I apply? Like, I do have those every now and then,
Mhm.
but rarely. And it definitely, like, it wasn't even entering my mind. Like, it never entered my mind that it was a big deal to start a website. It didn't enter my mind. Me starting an LLC is like, well, should you do that? I'm like, no, it's the
Mhm.
next logical step. Like, I don't want to get sued for tax evasion. So I'm going to create an LLC, which means I need to create a website so that I seem real. Like,
Mhm.
when my friend said, hey, if you want to show at fairs, you need to create a body of work, more than 6 paintings. I do 6 to 10. So I was like, okay, I'll do 6 to 10. It just didn't click, like, oh, that's a lot. Because I didn't know that was a lot. I just knew
Mhm.
I need to create 6 to 10. I got a lot in my head that I need to pour out anyway. Let me just create some stuff. Like, it was
Okay.
very organic and fluid, kind of like how my hands are right now. Like, like I just
I like
don't
how
get
your
in.
hands are now. Yes,
I
yes.
just don't get in my head that much. I mean, when
Mhm.
I do, when I am, as they say, shooketh, it's usually for something that affects my friends and family
Mhm.
more than my my right to do something that people think put on a pedestal. Because I think that comes to my core. I don't put stuff on a pedestal. Therefore, I
Hmm.
could care less asking permission to do something. Like I just do it. And if I get
Hmm.
my hand slapped later, okay. I mean, in my life, I've gotten my hand slapped several times. That still hasn't stopped me yet. Sometimes I still keep going because it's just. Does that answer
Yeah.
your question?
Absolutely, because what I'm really hearing is that you are bold, and right, you already
Yeah.
said this. These are your words. You don't get stuck in your head, at least
Mhm.
not in this aspect. You execute, you focus on execution. You have
Yeah.
something to do, you move forward. So the action, and I truly believe that action builds confidence, it creates confidence. But you're moving in a space of not thinking of all of the disadvantages. You're just moving,
I'm
and
just
then
moving.
you're moving and handling challenges or even the benefits or opportunities as they come your way. So boldness is what I'm hearing. And also
Yes.
seeing for those of you who are listening as I'm sitting here with Courtney, not only is she dynamic and bold, of course, those of us who struggle
Yeah.
with being bold, because that may not be our natural tendency, because it sounds like this is your natural tendency.
Mhm.
What advice would you give someone to be able to walk into their fullness and not get stuck in their mind, overthinking and overthinking?
I mean, it's pretty organic for me, but I think about the things that my dad and my mom used to say. Like, they always taught me there was no place where I didn't have a right to be there.
Hmm.
And even if I was pushed out because of, I don't know, my lack of skill or my lack of perceived skill or my gender identity or my sexuality or my ethnic identity, I was always taught you don't stop fighting and you don't stop pushing, even when people push back. Like my dad used to say, he said, or no, both of them used to say basically they're like, how do you climb a mountain, Courtney? And I'm like, yeah, one step at a time. Like that was my mom. My dad was like, it's not what's most important is not how many times you're knocked down, it's how many times you get back up. So I was always raised hearing like those kind of affirmations in my life. And I not only did they say it, but they backed it up. So I guess that's what I'll pay forward through this podcast. Like,
Hmm.
don't let you being knocked down or belittled or told that you can't stop you. Always question. Even when you're afraid to say, well, why? Still say it, still question it, still poke, still prod. I think a lot of people take feedback at surface value and don't keep pushing.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't do that. Like I can't tell you how many times I've been told, "Oh, we don't do that," or I've never seen anybody do something like that. And I'm like, "Well, I'm doing it." Right? It's yeah, don't take no for an answer. And when you feel afraid to push forward or push back, just lean into that discomfort. Like I think that's one of the best things my father ever taught me was he said, if you're feeling uncomfortable right now, he's like, that's a good thing. He said,
Mm.
he said, even if you stutter as you're saying the words out loud to push back on what someone's telling you can't do, he said, stutter. He said, but still say it, still do it. So for all those people that say you can't, and sometimes it's well-meaning people who it's not like they're trying to keep you down. They just don't know any better. And they think they're maybe protecting you. Um, just push through it.
Hmm.
Ask
Yeah.
why. Like I remember even in my corporate life, there was a coworker that I dealt with who said, "Oh, well, you can't be in such and such meeting." And but because of their level, they said that. And I literally said, why? And I remember being a little uncomfortable when I said why. And he said, well, and I'm like, but give me a actual reason. Not just because of something superficial, like is there a reason why I can't be at XYZ? And I would say, even whether you're in the art world, whether you're in public art, whether you're in auctions, whatever you're doing, like, I just usually question when people say things with authority without explanation. And I would encourage people, even when you're questioning, even when you're feeling uncomfortable, if you're asking the question in your head and you're afraid to say it, just say it. Like, even if you're showing vulnerability, even if you're sounding scared as you're doing it, I don't think enough people lean into being courageous. And that's honestly what causes some of the problems in the world, because people, there's very few that stand up and say something different or push against the tide. Most people follow. And I think what helps is, even if you're not the first one, try and be the 10th or 15th or 100th person to stand up and say, I'm going to do something different. And usually that takes a little bit of courage. Sometimes that takes speaking your truth, even when you're scared to your bones. Like, there's been times where I have been truly scared, but I still said it, even though I was visibly scared. But all those times built me up to all the other times where I wasn't scared at all. I just questioned. It served me well in my life, because I think of like relatives and friends where we'll be standing somewhere and someone will say, oh, well, you can't do that. And they go, oh, okay. And I'm like, well, why? Well, it's always been done this way. And I'm like, just because it's always been done a different way doesn't mean that's the right way. And then when you start picking apart the way it was done, you can find potentially better ways, optimized ways, and this makes people think differently. But if you don't question the status quo, you're never going to get to the innovation or evolution. I think that's why in a different life, I'd probably be an inventor. Like, I probably invent stuff, because like, I'm always like, well, why is it this way? Why not do this? And I think because of my background, I'm an engineer by degree. Like, I feel like I would definitely be in that realm of trying to design and build things, just because that's my background. But anyway, that's off topic.
Well, it sounds like curiosity
Yeah.
will help. Help
Curiosity and
us with
courage. Yeah.
curiosity and courage will help us with boldness. And there are many times I can be very transparent where it's been very easy to shrink, and there have been times when I had to, even if I'm not advocating for myself, advocating for my child, right? That puts you in a position that you have to speak up. And each time that you do, each time that you speak up, each time that you advocate, each time that you're curious, whether, as you mentioned, you speak and you're trembling, it gets easier each time, right?
Yeah.
So the encouragement is to step out and do it, speak, be bold, take action, and it does get better. We grow in such a space where we can be bold, not just for ourselves, but for others. So when I'm thinking about the fact that you are almost a self-taught artist, and that you are continuing to forge your own path in the art world, what advice would you give to listeners who are looking to pursue a passion but may feel intimidated by a lack of formal training or resources? Because we think in our heads, right? We get stuck in our heads again. Oh, I need this. I need to have a degree, right? We go back and we another degree. How do you pursue your passion without those restraints?
You know, and again, I've been there. Like, even as an artist, I'm like, oh, I'm self-taught, and I'll see other people's works when I'm walking around galleries or at different fairs, and I'll literally look at them like, how did they do that? And I remember at one point I thought, oh, well, they must have learned a certain technique in art school that I just won't be privy to because I didn't go to art school, right? Then something kept saying, just ask art school grads what they learned. And almost all of them said, yeah, we did learn techniques, but most of those techniques you could just learn if you just do a Google search. Or you could also learn a certain technique if you attend residencies and there's ask people questions. There's training residencies. So what I discovered, unless it's a very specific profession, you can learn how to do it if you put your mind to it. Like, prime example, my full background. My degree is in industrial engineering. I'm an engineer by degree, right? I transferred from that into market research and then ethnography. I transformed it from that into marketing. From marketing, I basically was like, oh, I want to make art. So now I'm doing fine art for the last few years. Now I'm making the transition into public art. And public art is going to potentially be bridging my business experience, my technical experience, and my fine art experience. But all of those experiences prepared me for this whole other realm that I didn't think I would be qualified for, which in reality, I actually am very qualified for. Probably more qualified than some other fellow artists because I had the technical, I had this, I had that. And one thing that I also learned is there is a lot of value in community. Especially as I, like, now that I'm thinking about when I dip into the public art realm, a lot of people work in teams. So like before I was getting hung up on, oh, well, because like I'm going into sculptures, I'm going into puppetry, I'm going into installation in addition to my canvas and plexiglass work. And I was like, oh, I don't know how to build that. So now I spent hours one month right before I left for Greece for my residency, hours researching, how to build sculptures and casting and fabrication. And I didn't feel like I was getting anywhere. And a couple of the residents were like, most of those artists, they conceptualize the idea, but they partner with fabricators. They partner with this. They partner with writers. They partner with poets. They partner with lighting designers. They're like, it's a community effort. So as I think back to changing careers and evolving out of where you are, sometimes it might take networking. Networking, I think, has been one of the biggest keys to my success in all my different parts of my different careers. So networking is extremely important because with networking, you can potentially discover someone who can train you, where you can apprentice. So maybe you learn something on the job. Maybe that person tells you, hey, you actually can learn XYZ by doing these YouTube tutorials. I use these. This is what helped me get to where I'm at. Sometimes it's not always formal education. Sometimes it is. But I find in the art world, you really don't always need it. There's usually ways you can learn it just by talking to people. And for all of my introverts out there, if you don't want to immediately network, you can Google search it first. Like that's like a go-to for me because I'm an ambivert. But at a certain point, when you're doing this stretch into a career, networking and talking to others and getting mentorship that's authentic is invaluable. Like I know so many entrepreneurs in a variety of industries that intersect with art, and they come from such various backgrounds, from anthropology, and now they're doing installation and metal sculptures, to people who are doing art and now are doing arts funding and now are in charities and charitable work. All of them got where they are by talking to other people, bouncing ideas off of them, and then figuring out how to make it. I think what people fall short with is when they want to transition careers, some either don't want to talk to people or some don't want to make a plan. And the way to transition, the way to move to your next step is not only you research, aka network, because networking isn't just about always just getting a job. Networking sometimes is about learning what you don't know. It's about getting mentors. It's about getting sponsors. It's about finding out from them, hey, what is it that I actually need to know to do XYZ? And sometimes they might enlighten you to a completely different path. And then once you have all of that, what I call desk research, then where people fall apart when they're transitioning careers or without the credentialing is making a plan forward. Like they just think that, okay, I did all the research, it's going to miraculously come forward if I just put a website out there. No, that's not what's going to happen. You need to make an actual tangible plan on like, how am I going to get from A to B to C to D? And if you don't have that skill set, that's when, again, you ask for help. Ask for people that you know are good at planning. Because planning is a key part of transitioning into anything that you might want to do. And I think that's where people fall short, is planning and then having the tenacity to stick with the plan, even when numerous roadblocks happen on the way during the plan. Because that's like those three pieces. I've seen people fall off because they don't want to network or get the training or research or whatever it is to understand. I've seen people fall off because they don't know how to make a plan. And I've seen a lot of people fall off because they don't follow the plan through fruition when bad things happen. The key thing is sticking with the plan when bad things happen, and when everything is against you and the whole world is knocking you down. You don't give up the plan. You might have plans A, B, C, and D, but don't give up. And most people give up after roadblock 1. Some give up after roadblock 20. You don't. Like in my art career and in my all of it, I mean, I've had more rejections than acceptances. I just focus on the joy I get from getting an acceptance for whatever it is. Like people often see artists I know when we're telling people about an accolade or a thing that we're doing, but they don't see all the rejections. Like for every one accolade that you might see on Instagram or on our website or an article, we might have 15 or 20 rejections. Yeah. That's normal. And you can't let those rejections knock your self-esteem down that you don't stick to your plan.
Yes. Courtney, that is everything you mentioned is just extremely transformative. Okay. And I have been in a space where I have said, okay, I've run into so many roadblocks, but I'm going to keep going. And I think that's one of the things our listeners that you're sharing, right? Those different aspects of where people fall down. Mm-hmm. They fall down, but they don't get back up, right? So they do have the plan, right? They're ready to execute. They get knocked down and they get weary in the process. And a lot of times being tenacious is going to help us be successful.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I'm so glad that you were able to share your experience. Mm-hmm. What advice do you have for someone who's searching for clarity or their purpose in life?
You asking me that?
Yes, I'm asking you. And I'm only giving you a few minutes. I'm only giving you a few seconds. Honestly, tell us more.
Mm-hmm. When I've needed clarity, I've asked questions. I'm a big fan of asking what I call subject matter experts. Whatever that thing is, I need clarity on. So many times people say, I don't know what I want to do with my life, but they might be asking someone who can't actually guide or coach them. Right? So I think in my life, like I'm a complete multi-hyphenate, and I've settled on what my multi-hyphenates are going to be. But when I started out as just this girl in Houston who really loved art, was thinking about architecture, was thinking about industrial design, got freaked out by the economy, went to engineering school, and did technical stuff for like 15 years. Didn't make sense. Like if anything, if I was going to do it, I should do what I'm doing now, which is my different things with doing it now. And yeah, you just have to, you can't let it stop you. Like you have to keep going. You have to ask questions. I can't stress enough asking questions. And if your circle of people around you are not people that you could ask those questions of, don't be afraid or intimidated to reach out to people who are doing it and ask the questions. And you might have a lot of people that say no, but you might have someone that is willing to talk. Mm-hmm. Like, as I think about when I switched over into art and I was doing collage making, the simplest little things that make collage artists successful, it can be a lot of troubleshooting. And sometimes you have to just swallow your pride and ask questions. I'll give you a perfect example. Collage artists, all of us know every adhesive on the planet. All we do is glue things together. We might paint, but we glue things together. And I remember I got feedback from a gallery in Harlem because I made this piece. I used this glue. I thought it was fine. And she realized it was yellowing, and it also just made streaks, and it was this. So I remember I got feedback. One said, work on your technique on how you brush stroke the glue, so that be intentional with it, not all over the place, unless it's part of your narrative story, which is something you don't think about as a collage artist. You don't think about, oh, if they see the glue streaks, is that part of your narrative? And I'm like, once I started thinking that way, I adjusted what types of glue I use on the piece depending on when I'm doing it. Because sometimes I will do a design with the glue that you could only see when you're standing there looking at it. But I didn't think about it. I didn't put thought behind it. And it was at my residency at Art Crawl Harlem, the directors challenged me to think about my brush strokes with my glue, like the way you would think of your brush strokes with paint. Mm-hmm. Again, listening to others. Another one was like, hey, there's different types of glue. This is yellowing. That's not going to be archival. Therefore, collectors aren't going to want to buy that. And at first I was like, well, I'm a collage artist. Like, it's fine. Then I took a step and said, wait, swallow your pride. They know more than you do. And then that's when I started asking other collage artists that I literally actively search for on social media. And I would just ping them and say, hey, very random question. I'm not trying to ask your technique. All I want to know is, what adhesive do you use and why? The wealth of answers I got back caused me to take a pause in my art in probably in 2021. I took a pause in my art and I spent 2 months learning all the different types of adhesive. Wow. But I did that because it makes the difference. Now I use stuff that is almost industrial strength, but it's still archival. It might not be at an art store, but I wouldn't have done that if I didn't humble myself, take the feedback, listen, and then research more. There is value in just asking questions and being able to listen to the feedback. And I know in my life, there's sometimes I'll get feedback and I don't react well, and then it's not good. But I always tell them in the moment, I said, even if I'm reacting what you might consider poorly, I assure you I am listening. And I said, and I will come back and I will figure this out. And I'm going to thank you later, even if you don't think I am. Because again, my personality, I can be bold. So sometimes my reaction will be strong and they think, oh, you don't take feedback. And I'm like, no. I'm hurt because I'm, as they say, I'm an artist, I'm sensitive. But that doesn't mean I wasn't listening. And I remember those two people gave me that feedback. And it changed my technique, my style, and my process. And it really helped me evolve and go further. So I credit both of them, the gallerist in Harlem and my director at the Art Crawl residency, for pushing me to think. So I give that as an example of ask for feedback, listen to the feedback. Even if you're emotional in the moment, don't ignore the feedback. Listen to it and challenge yourself to say, okay, maybe they do have a point. You don't have to take all of it, but don't ignore it. Because that's the only way you're going to evolve.
Right. That is how you evolve. And it sounds like exploring and being curious helps. So what's next for you, Courtney? What's next on your journey?
Let's see. Well, from an art perspective, as I mentioned before, I'm branching into public art. I don't know how long it's going to take me. I'm hoping maybe in a year to maybe 2 to 3 years, I can win with a commission. I'm working on building a team under Courtney Minor Design Studio because I really want to take my art from fine art to three-dimensional and really have it in public spaces of all types. There's a few things brewing. And ironically, a lot of to get to the point where I can just create freely, I'm going to have to leverage skills from my corporate life to get me to that point, because public art is both business and art.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that's probably a big piece. And then on the purely fine art side, I mean, I just finished my residency in Greece with Scop Art. I created a really large piece that's like 7 foot tall by like 9 feet wide. I'm still working on it. It's part of my other series. I've been really taking my time with this body of work. I used to be that I would create paintings, like a whole bunch all at once in like a matter of weeks. I don't really do that anymore. I take my time now, and I have the luxury of doing that because of how I've built my life with all of my avenues. I am hoping to potentially show some of my other series maybe in 2026. I don't know if it'll be ready in 2025, but I think it'll be ready in 2026. Yeah, and then I'm looking at residencies in some of the more street art specific capitals, as well as installation art capitals. Again, I'm not sure if I'm going to do it in 2025, but I'm aiming for 2026. 2025 is going to be my year of creation, as well as break, taking a break, actually going on vacation. But I also want to create quite a bit and build up a body of work that represents, I think, my clarified purpose. So stay tuned.
We will stay tuned. We will. So, Courtney, where can we find you? Where are you located? Which social media platform?
So if you like social media, I am on Instagram, and it's called at Hey, it's Courtney Minor. So like HeyItsCourtney Minor. Hey, it's Courtney Minor. I picked that because I thought it was easy.
It is easy. It is.
And then also I have Instagram for my studio. And right now it's kind of has some duplicates of some of my stuff, but that's going to change as with the product design as well as the public art. You're going to start to see more of that stuff on there come through. And that is at the CMD Studio. That is like the design part of the studio that I'm branching into in addition to the fine art. And my website is also thecmdstudio.com. And it features both my fine artwork as well as some of my merch. And as that evolves, we'll see how much of my fine art will stay there, or if I separate it into a portfolio website as well as public art. Don't know yet. That's probably the last thing I'm going to do. Okay, well, that's probably the best ways to contact me. If you need to email me, it's Courtney at RONIMart.com. Yeah, that's
awesome. Awesome. Well, I just want to say thank you. What a discussion. I am walking away with just so many gems. And one thing that it just really stands out to me is boldness, curiosity, being curious, continuing to ask questions, and then the resiliency, right? When you get knocked down, no matter how many times you get knocked down, you get back up. So again, Courtney, thank you for joining. Let's talk. So happy to have you here, and hopefully we can bring you back again to share more gems and more, hear more about the great work that you're doing. So thank you. And everyone, thank you for joining this episode.
Thank you for joining Let's Talk Passion and Purpose. I hope you're leaving inspired and ready to elevate your journey. Remember to subscribe, rate, and share if you enjoyed today's episode. Stay connected, follow your passion, live purposefully, and we'll see you next time.